So good afternoon, everyone.
Good
Hope you all
afternoon.
can hear us. My name is Joe Wynn. I'm the director here at the VETS Group Training Academy, where we're located in downtown Washington, D.C. And we want to welcome you all to our session for DC seniors, information session that we're going to conduct today. Just a little bit about the VETS Group. We've been here now for about 15 years, serving the DC and the Washington metro area. We primarily reach out to veterans, their families, and of course, members of the community to provide IT training for high demand occupations in the IT industry. And we also assist individuals who are interested in starting or expanding their own small business. We have an association with the National Association for Black Veterans. So we're always reaching out to our veterans in the community. And we're trying to, I guess, is our number one initiative is to end homelessness among veterans. Pretty soon later as we come into the next year, we're going to be offering free services for senior veterans who need assistance with filing claims for their VA benefits. So we'll be setting up right here at our site here in DC, downtown DC, and DC senior veterans will be able to come to our site to receive assistance from the legal counsel for the elderly, who will assist them with filing claims for their benefits. So we're looking forward to that. That's a new program we'll be starting in January. But today we're going to have a presentation from Mr. James Silver, who's also one of our vets and longtime friend in the IT industry, who's now doing a number of other things, which he'll tell you about during his presentation. But I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Williams to introduce our presenter. Ms. Williams.
Hello, everyone. I hope you're all ready and for the new holidays for Christmas. But I'd like to get into our introduction of our speaker today, who is Mr. James Silver. He is speaking in the capacity of a licensed life insurance representative today. 3 years ago, he earned his license, and since that time, he has been on a mission to financially educate people so that they can leave a legacy to their family. James specializes in personal life insurance. He believes that putting his clients first and maintaining a high level of professionalism on their behalf is what makes clients eager to refer him to their family and friends. James brings a high level of expertise to his clients and works diligently with them to find a plan that meets all their concerns. His passions for helping clients is the reason he is in this industry today. James specializes in working with clients to identify problems they might not know they have before it's too late. He enjoys helping people choose the best possible goals, plans that can help them feel secure and plan their financial goals. In addition to his position in life insurance, he has been an information technology consultant for 35 years. He has a BS degree from University of Maryland in computer management. In addition to all of that, he is a member at First Baptist Church, where he has been a facilitator teaching financial literacy. Basically, Crown Financial Ministries is a class for both adults or teens to understand God's way of handling money. For the last 7 years, he has been a facilitator of these classes on debt management called D-Free, where he helps students start on a path of debt reduction. He challenges his students to slow down their spending and increase their income. So today, I'd like to introduce Mr. James Silver as he speaks to us today on planning for your future, being prepared. Thank you so much for being here, Mr. Silver.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Appreciate you all having me here. I really appreciate Mr. Wynn for and yourself for reaching out to me and allowing me to share a little bit about what I have done and how I can help somebody else. I really appreciate the audience that's here. I am been in the DC area for over 35 years now, and I'm here to try to help the people of my community. So with that being said, let me get started. I have to share my screen with everyone and we get started. Okay, let's share. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes. Yes.
We just put it in full screen. Okay, today's topic is going to be talking about a topic that's near and dear to my heart. Again, I teach financial literacy, and one of the things I do, and my audience primarily are seniors. Seniors, I'm 63 years old, so I'm in that category of being, sometimes people may call me a senior. So I want to make sure families are taken care of. So today we're going to be talking about estate planning and final expense preparation. It's what I call a loving gift to our survivors. My name is James Silver. My phone number is going to be 240-245-7678. Okay, this presentation is meant to be a general overview of estate planning and should not be considered as legal advice. I am not an attorney. You should consult your attorney in your state to determine your legal requirements for your individual situation. So we're going to be talking about what is an estate first. So I want to talk about this, which is going to lead me into the final expense preparation. An estate, and a lot of times families says, I don't have an estate. I live in an apartment. I don't have a whole lot. Well, an estate is all the monies and all the property of a particular person that they may have, and especially at their death. So whatever you have, whatever you own is your estate. Okay, I just need to start with some definitions of what we're talking about. So this cartoon here I put in here so to give us a little laugh here. Says, everybody freeze. Give me all your money and all the money on your estate planning. So many of us don't know what estate planning means. So we're going to talk about some things about estate planning. So who could benefit from this discussion? People who have estate tax concerns and or protection goals. In other words, when somebody dies, there's going to be somebody who's going to have to pay some taxes. And then some people might want to say, I want to protect my assets so that it passes on to my next generation. Since I'm a Bible study student and I'm a Sunday school teacher, I always use a lot of scriptures in my presentations. And one of the scriptures that I'm always using is Hosea 4:6, says, my people perish for a lack of knowledge. Another scriptures I use, and I'll use it later on in this presentation, is Proverbs 13:22, which says, a good man, a good woman, a good person leaves an inheritance to their children's children. So many times we're not leaving enough money to take care of things, and taxes and other things get taken away, and that's why our property gets taken away from us. When someone dies, the property is no longer passed on to the generation, that they can't keep up those taxes. And this is something that we need to talk about. So we want to make sure that people can put these advanced directives in place. Transferring financial wealth is the arranging of the transfer of this finances that you have to your family. It's usually done through a last will and or a revocable living trust. So I'm going to define these terms as we go on. And the reason I'm going through this is because so many of our families have not prepared these documents and they have not put things in place, and they don't have things ready to when something does happen, and that puts a problem with the family as somebody dies. A last will and testament is your final wishes that can be executed through a last will or last will and testament. It should include your choices, your executive, the person you want to place in charge of your estate. Whatever monies, resources that you may have, you want somebody in charge of that. Somebody that you can trust, somebody that is not going to skip off and try to take your property and take it for themselves. You want your property to go to the people that you want it to go to. And that may or may not be somebody immediately in your family. I know that I am an executive on a good friend of mine's estate. He says, I don't want to put my family members on there. I want somebody outside of the family, somebody who he can trust. And he has made me his administrator. So sometimes it's somebody outside the family. Okay. The probate process. Every will, whether you have a will or don't have a will, the process of probate will take place. That is when the court decides what happens to your assets. And when I say your assets, I'm talking about your property, anything else that you may have. Any outstanding debts that you may have, your creditors may come after that to try to get that money out of your estate. And when that happens, this process goes through, it's called a process of being in probate. It helps these creditors get their money out of your estate. This cartoon I put in here because this shows that 9 years after this person died, this estate hasn't been settled, and they're still going through the process. It can take time for this process to take place. And when it takes place, the courts and the lawyers are the only ones who really win in this process. So, sorry about that. All the interested parties in your will can come out and contest the validity of your will. So if you owe hospital bills, if you owe medical bills, if you owe any kind of monies to somebody else, they can contest the will. They'll file a petition before the court and they can get the money before your family does. So I'm gonna talk to you about the next aspect of it. It's called a revocable living trust. And this cartoon just shows you that the doctor's telling him, maybe you want to put your money, stop putting your money into a living trust. Now, what is a revocable living trust? A living trust is an agreement between the trust settler, which is the owner of the owner, that could be you and I, and a trustee and another entity that can be amended, revoked, funded, defunded during the settler's life. During your lifetime, we can put money into this trust and take it out. You have full control of this trust. All the assets needed to be funded into the trust for these provisions are governed then, meaning the assets must actually be retitled into the name of the trust. Here's somewhat that means. If you have a house, if you have a car, you retitle the house and the car into the name of the trust. You control the trust, but you physically actually don't own the house. The trust owns the house, but you control the trust. If that makes sense to everybody. Okay, a revocable trust is always prepared along with a last will or testament. A revocable living trust is revocated or changeable, meaning you can change that revocable trust while the owner is alive. Once the owner dies, it becomes irrevocable, which means it can't be changed at that point. But as long as the owner of the trust is alive, the trust can be changed. The owner owns the trust, but all the property is in the trust name. So why would we want to do this? This is the mechanisms of protecting our assets. If anything is inside the trust, can't be touched by the court systems. So when a case goes to probate, since this is your property is in that trust, the court can't touch that. If that makes sense to anybody. A lot of people were upset about O.J. Simpson. When O.J. Simpson got out of prison, he still had money. He had money because his money was in this trust. That's why it's protected. So the family could not touch any of the money that was in his trust. If that makes sense to everybody. The next thing we want to talk about is advance directives. And this is something that I believe that everyone needs to have in place. With COVID, like we've been having problems with COVID for the last 2 years now, without advance directives, families couldn't even make medical decisions for their family members. With advanced directives, there's 2 things that you need to have in place for advanced directives. That's having a living will. That's a record of your preferences regards to your medical procedures. So in other words, if you went into the hospital today and you was unconscious, who makes the medical decisions for you? Who can have access to those medical decisions? In many cases, the individuals that is sick cannot make decisions because they are sick. If you was placed on a ventilator, you can't make decisions. So someone else has to make medical decisions for you. One is called the living will is giving people permission to have access to your medical care. And the second one is so they can make medical decisions for you. It's called a medical power of attorney. Incapacitated planning. As we age, we got to think about one day we might get to a point where we may not have the capacity to make decisions for ourselves. I'm sure each of us have known someone who had Alzheimer's. Every one of us have probably known somebody. I know I had a cousin of mine and she had Alzheimer's, and at that point, right before her death, she didn't know who her family member was. She was incapable of making any kind of decisions. So while we are able to make decisions for ourselves, we need to make sure that we put things like this in place. By doing so, you put a successor in place in case you become disabled, so that they can make the decisions for us. Because we can never know when we may become incapacitated. So I want you to take action. I want you to think about taking some action today about what you should be doing. I am not a lawyer. I can't talk legal terms to anybody, but I do know that things like this need to take place. So I'm gonna move from that aspect into what I do for a living. I believe in final expense funding. It is human nature for people to follow trends, and final expense funding is clearly an idea whose time has come. Thousands of us are waking up with the realization that their final arrangements are something to be left to their loved ones, not be left to their loved ones. It is your responsibility. It is not your family's responsibility to make sure things are taken care of when you die. It's your responsibility. It's your responsibility to make sure the monies are there. I hear families all the time telling me, well, I'm not going to be here, so I ain't going to worry about it. You put an undue a burden on your family when you take that attitude. And I find that so many Black people amongst ourselves, our families, are taking the attitude as, well, I'm gone. I don't have to worry about that problem. Every person on this green earth should make pre-arrangements and fund their final expenses, regardless of their age, their sex, or their beliefs. None of us are exempt from death, but we all can make things much easier for those we say we love when that time does come. So here's an example of what every family is facing. This is an example of what it costs for funerals. If you notice at the bottom line there, it says $20,655 for an average funeral. In the DC area, in the DMV area, it costs between $8,000 on a minimum side to about $15,000 just for the funeral in this area. That does not include a grave. So when you add in the grave into that process, it could be another $4,000 to $8,000. Now, as a veterans, we are entitled to be buried in a military cemetery as veterans. So the veteran cemetery here, I know there's one out here in Maryland and Upper Marlboro called Cheltenham. That's one there. There's one down in Quantico. A lot of us may not get the chance to be in Arlington, but Quantico, and Cheltenham are available to us. So here's an example. It just says $15,000 to $20,000 is what your family is facing. If your family doesn't have this kind of money in a bank account, then you need to put something in place to make sure that that's covered. Most people don't consider final expenses other than just for the funeral, but it could consist of a lot of other things. It can help reduce the stress on your family. It can reduce your estate settlement costs. It can help with your probate fees. It can help with any leftover taxes that you may owe, any long-term care. I recently had a conversation with my wife, and she was telling me about an individual that she knows that's on life support right now, and they need to move that person to a long-term care facility. That facility is going to cost about $23,000 a month for that facility. And I'm like, who's going to pay for this? And so that's something that we all got to think about is if we ever get into a position where we got to be in long-term care, it's extremely expensive for long-term care. By having to find an insurance policy can help take care of that when something happens, and that can help pay some of those monies back. I mentioned earlier about Proverbs 13:22. The Bible tells us to leave an inheritance to our children's children. For those who are believers, to leave the gift to your grandchildren, so they're not starting over and over. And that's what has happened to our generation, from generation to generation. Every generation seems to be starting over. It eases the burden, final expense ease the burden on family members. And ensures that your wishes, that my wishes are carried out and respected when I die. So here's some things that you need to think about. Here's what the insurance company, we know that when we reach 65, 50% of the chance of us ending up in the hospital. It's 50% chance of us ending up into a hospital when we hit 65. Insurance companies make money on this, okay? Doctor's insurance. We know that the insurance companies know that 50% of the people will go to a doctor, 50% won't. We find that so many men have a tendency not to go to doctors, but they pay for health insurance, and the insurance company and never use the health insurance. Nursing home. We know that 50% is a possibility that 50% of the people will need a nursing home at some point. But we know one thing, that 100% of the people will need some type of final expense insurance. Will Rogers said it best. There's two things in life that are certain. There is death and taxes. So what do you know? What you don't know is what we know is going to happen about final expenses. But we all know that we're going to use some kind of insurance to take care of that. So I'm going to show you some choices. I work for a company called Lincoln Heritage. And what makes us a little different from other insurance companies is the fact that we're going to price shop for families when somebody dies. So what we're going to do is we are affiliated with an organization called the Funeral Consumer Guidance Society, or FCGS for short. And basically what we do is when one of our members die, instead of them going directly to a funeral home to have the funeral taken care of, we tell the families they need to contact us, reach out to us. And when they reach out to us, we're going to help price shop for families. We're going to contact 3 funeral homes in the area. We may call one in DC and one in Virginia and one maybe in one in Maryland, and get their prices and say, look, give me your prices for what my member wanted. And by doing so, we can then save a lot of the money that should go to the family. And we can save that money, and that money goes directly to them. The FCGS is an independent consumer advocacy organized to focus on the funeral industry. The funeral industry is estimated to be a $68 billion industry within 2 years. $68 billion industry. The one thing that we know is going to happen to all of us, we're going to die. And I know this is not things that I've talked about right before the holidays, but this is a topic that needs to be talked about. There are more deaths due to suicides during the between now and the end of January than any other time of the year. people are distressed because of the holidays. And then when January comes around, all their bills come due. They are stressed behind that. A lot of families says, I can't take it, I'm checking out. So here's an example of all the funeral expenses that families got to face. Funeral home services, casket, transportation, flowers, permits, death certificates, out of burial containers, cemetery properties, the opening and closing, the monuments, all of these things has to be paid, and somebody has to pay for them. So what our organization does is we make sure that all the bills get paid. So we put a policy in place, and through that policy, we fund all things that need to be paid. So if a funeral comes up to $6,500, our organization, through our policies, will make sure that that funeral gets paid, and the family, it releases the stress on the family. Like I said, we're advocacy through this process. We're there to support the family. Families don't have to worry about anything. We make sure that things are, if they have questions about anything dealing with the funeral process, we're there to take care of that for them. My name is James Silver. I'm your final expense expert. My phone number is going to be 240-245-7678. My email address is going to be consult James Silver, JE at consult@gmail.com. Does anyone have any questions about anything I shared with you? I know I was trying to rush through this because I didn't know how much time I had, but I want to make sure the information is there. Now it's time, for your questions and answers.
Thank you for your presentation. I was wondering, by any chance, would you have a living will form that you can distribute to us?
I will have I can get you a living will form that I can distribute to you, yes.
Okay. Should I email you my email address?
You can email me you can do that, I'm sorry, consult, CONSULT, JE Silver @gmail.com. I had the wrong email address in there, but let me correct it right now for you.
Can
Back in there.
you repeat, please?
I'm gonna put it in chat for you.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much.
So does anyone have any other questions?
Yes, hi, thank you. My name is Cheryl Edwards. You didn't mention anything about cremation. What does the figures look like for cremation?
Okay.
Thank you.
Cremation costs in the state, in this area, is between $3,000 and $8,000. And funny, you should mention cremation. Cremation, there are three types of cremations One is a direct cremation, which means person dies, body's cremated. Okay. The second one is a cremation after a memorial service of some type.
Okay.
Okay, which means you have a service at the funeral home or someplace like a church or someplace.
Right.
Then there's a cremation that's done after a funeral, and that means you have a full funeral. There's a casket that's been rented because they reuse that casket. The casket's been rented. The service is done, and then the cremation is done afterwards.
Okay. All right. So direct is, after the hospital or whatever, straight cremation. That's direct?
That's direct. That usually is done within 1 to 2 days after somebody dies.
Okay.
I recently went to a memorial service for somebody who was cremated just past weekend, and I have never been to one where there was there was no body there. It was just different for me. I mean, I'm so used to going to funerals that going to one of those, it was just different for me.
Okay, good.
But that's a possibility. Is that the email address on the screen there is correct. It's the consult jesilver@gmail.com. Any other questions?
Yes. And one more question. Does inflation affect the funeral industry as it affects everything else?
Absolutely. Funeral cost goes up every year.
Okay.
So the cemetery cost goes up every year.
Okay.
It doubles every 10 years.
Wow.
So what we paid for 10 years ago is double them. When my parents died in 2009, my mom died in 2009, the funeral was about $6,000. That same funeral was about $12,000 now. Same
Wow.
funeral, okay?
Mm, yeah.
But there are some things that we can do to cut down on the cost, but you got to be educated on those things. That's
Exactly.
where reaching out to me, I can help educate families on those things that they can do to save money on those costs.
Okay.
I just went through that situation, and for those of us who are not veterans, you know, you have to pay for the plot and the funeral and embalming and all of that. It was $25,000.
Wow.
Yeah, and
Wow.
it was a very, very simple thing. It just, you know, had a rabbi there. It wasn't like, you know, tons of flowers or anything. It was very simple, like simple casket, because we don't believe in like very fancy stuff. So $25,000, and you know, it all fell on me because there's no other family member.
So let me ask you this question. Did you use insurance only?
Insurance?
Did you use
No,
insurance?
no, there was no insurance, no life
was-
insurance.
There was no life insurance. Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
I say somebody like myself I probably could have been an advocate to help families through that process. Because I know of some sources where you can get things a little bit less expensive than just going directly to funeral homes.
Okay.
And then we shop around. We shop around for other things. We don't shop around for funerals. And I mean, that's something that we don't talk about. So funerals are taboo in our community.
Yes.
It's taboo. And since it's taboo, we don't talk about it. And since we don't talk about it, we're not educated. And that's why I use the scriptures of my people perishing. We're putting money into the ground that we cannot get back.
Yeah. Yeah. And I remember a few years ago, maybe like about 10, 15 years ago, I don't know what happened, but the Better Business Bureau people interjected, and now funeral parlors have to give you a list of the services they provide. So you can choose, do I want to go with company A or company B? And they have to list everything, the flowers, the hearse, people standing with white gloves on. And I thought that was very good for us as, you know, as the consumers.
In 1984, the
Right.
federal government got involved in the funeral
Yes.
homes, and they passed the Funeral Home Act of 1984.
That's it.
And as a result of that bill, they have to publish a price list, just like you have a menu at a restaurant. You have to publish a menu just like that. I'm in this business. I'm in the funeral homes at least once a week. I'm going to all the funeral homes in the areas. I said, I want it's called a general price list. I want to get their price list. So I go to all these funeral homes and say, give me your price list. I want to know what these prices cost, so that when somebody dies, at least I know how to direct them to a good source.
Yes, perfect. And we thank you for that.
Okay. And I would love to be able to sit with anyone who wants to have more additional information. I mean, sit and just have a conversation.
Yes, I do. So I will get in touch with you.
I understand the COVID, and we can do everything via phone, via Zoom. I mean, I see that people are fans of Zoom. We can do everything over telephone. I'm licensed in the DMV.
Good.
I'm licensed in New Jersey. I'm licensed in North Carolina. I got licensed in those states because I got family members in those states. I want to make sure my families are taken care of too.
Perfect.
Mr. Silvers, can you talk a little bit about the cremation? You said direct, and what was the other one?
Okay, there's a direct cremation.
Okay.
There's a direct cremation with memorial service, and then there's an indirect cremation, which does the funeral service and then a cremation. A direct cremation, I mean, depending on where you go, and people don't realize that funeral prices are like gas prices. You go to one gas station, you might get a price of $2.99, and you go right down the street, and you may have $3 or $5 for that same gas. Funeral homes are the same way. So why be loyal to somebody who is not going to help you? We are loyal to funeral homes. If my family member has used that funeral home, I'm gonna keep using that funeral home. I know that I'm from Hampton, Virginia, and there's a funeral home that my family and seems like every member of my family go to the same funeral home. And they say, well, I'm gonna give you 10% discount. Well, I could have gotten $1,000 discount at a different funeral home. So why be loyal to somebody like that? And then that's just my opinion. I mean, again, I'm sharing my opinion, but I want to make sure the families are taken care of. Cremation costs could be $1,500 at one funeral home, $5,000 at another funeral home. Same services. And most funeral homes are not crematories. Okay, a crematory is one as a facility that actually cremates the body. Most funeral homes are not crematories. So most funeral services home, they have to outsource that cremation process. So they send the body out to someplace else to be cremated. So they're adding money on it because they gotta get paid too. This is a business. This is again, and like I said, it's a $68 billion industry.
Now,
So
you also said that in the cremation that they rent the coffin. Is it possible you could purchase your coffin in advance?
Absolutely. Okay, the only reason why you rent a casket on a cremation because you're not going to use the casket after that. They're not going to burn the casket up.
Oh, okay.
Okay, they don't burn the casket up. When they do cremation, the body is cremated, not the casket.
Okay.
So why burn up the casket? Funeral home says, oh, I can use this again.
Okay.
And so they're not going to cremate that. So the only thing that gets cremated is the body.
All right. Thanks for that.
Okay.
Thank
So
you.
that direct cremation could be $1,500 at one funeral home, $3,000 at another funeral home.
Mm-hmm.
So we got to do some shopping around for that. And I tell people, it's like buying a car. We shop around for buying cars. We don't shop around for this. So
Well, excuse me, I wanted to say, do the funeral home do all of this as far as the cremation and all that stuff? Do they take care of everything for you?
when you say everything, explain what you mean by everything.
I mean, like you go, like when you go to have the regular service, you know, the funeral do everything, but when you have it cremated, they get the casket for you, the funeral home, and then they go through the process of getting somebody to cremate it for you.
Yes. If there was a cremation, see, funeral homes have already got contracts with a crematory. They already got a contract with a crematory. They know that if this body comes to this funeral home, it's going to be cremated at this crematory. There's only a few crematories in the area.
Oh, okay.
So it's not a lot of crematories. So since there's not a lot of them, most funeral homes are funeral services. Now, some funeral homes are not even funeral homes, they're just funeral services. And they work out of another funeral home. And so they already got contracts with this particular funeral home, this crematory, to cremate the body. So they know how much it's going to cost to have the body cremated at this crematory.
And you said it usually costs between $3,000 and $8,000?
$3,000 to $8,000, depending on which. It all depends on how many funeral personnel has to get involved in the process. The more people involved in the process, the more
you have to pay.
Yes.
Okay.
So that's why the price is $3,000 on one hand, and because if there was a direct cremation, the only thing they have to do is just pick up the body and take it to the crematory. That's all they do.
Okay.
They don't have to do anything. They don't have to do anything else. Now, when COVID first started, when last year when COVID first started, funeral homes wanted to cremate all the bodies because they didn't know whether this disease was going to be it could affect them. So they had to take precautions for themselves to make sure that they didn't get sick. We do know, here's what we know about this virus. It is an airborne disease.
Yeah.
Not get the pass on the disease from a dead body. It can't be passed on that way.
Okay.
It has to be breathed in.
Oh,
That's what we do know about it.
so it's really cheaper to just have a regular funeral service, isn't it?
Well, it's cheaper to have a cremation. It's still cheaper.
Oh, it is? Oh, that's cheaper. Okay.
Cremation is $3,000. A funeral is $8,000 to $15,000 just for the funeral service. And it all
Oh,
depends on what you have done.
uh-huh.
Okay, because
Okay.
everything has a price on it. You
Mhm.
know, the doves have, to get the little doves to fly out, there's a price on it.
Yeah.
I mean, when I was going through my parents' contract, I asked my sister, I said, why do we need 2 family cars?
Mhm.
All right. She said,
Yeah.
well, we had 6 people and the family. I said, but why do we need 6 crews? Those 2 cars, their car was $250 a piece. Why do we need to spend $500 on cars just to ride in a limo for a couple of hours? Does that make sense?
And going along those lines, there are now new ways funeral people are inventing the service. They're having the body sit on a chair. Have you seen stuff like that?
The funeral homes will do whatever you want to have done. It all depends on how much dollars you want to spend on it.
Wow.
I mean, I've seen those funerals like people. I saw one funeral where a man was like he was a drummer and he was like playing his drum set. I'm sure that funeral was probably close to $50,000
Wow.
because
Yeah,
all that had to be staged, all that had to be set up. It's all at a price.
yeah. In the country where I was born, the new funeral people, they have taken it to the next level. You know, they'll have the deceased sitting at the table like dinner, or like if he was a musician or an athlete, he's outside the parlor, as if he's, playing cricket or playing soccer. It is amazing. They've taken it to the next level.
Since you mentioned another country, families, I had one of my clients says, well, I'm from Nigeria. I want my body to be transferred back to Nigeria.
Yes.
About that.
Yes.
Okay? So I reached out to a funeral director that I know who tell me anything I need to know about the funeral business. She says to me, for her to do what she needs to do to get the body ready for to transport is $6,000.
Wow.
It could be another $8,000 to $10,000 for the airfare alone to get the body back to Nigeria.
Okay.
And then once you get it back to Nigeria, it has to, or any foreign country, there has to be a funeral director on that end to pick up the body, and they could charge whatever they want to charge.
Way.
So it could be $40,000 for that funeral for that person to go back to Nigeria. And
Wow.
that's the same thing, same cases that family members who have died in the United States and they want to be buried in a different state. 2 funeral homes has to be involved in this. And now I'm paying 2 different funeral services.
Mm.
Something to think about.
I wanted to tail end on that conversation because after my loved one passed and I took care of the expenses and everything, of course, it was a very emotional time, and the funeral home pretty much harassed me to death over the next few weeks by constantly calling me and asking me or telling me that I should go ahead and pay for my own arrangements in advance so that I could lock in a price and secure it. So, if it was going to be like another $25,000 for me to pay in advance, as opposed to, in 10 years, 20 years, whatever. So how do you feel about that? Should, the one thing that I was quite concerned about is that I do like to travel during non-COVID times. And if something happened to me overseas, I said, how much is it going to be to bring me back and take care of it that way? And she did quote like 30,000 just to bring the body back. And then it would be like the additional, 25,000 plus for everything else. So how do you feel about taking care of stuff like that in advance as opposed to, just having your estate take care of it at the time?
As an insurance advisor, I'm gonna take the insurance position on it. If you buy a pre-arranged service through a funeral home, and let's say it costs $10,000, and the person dies before that $10,000 is paid, the family will have to pay the additional money, whatever money it is, to make sure the funeral takes place. One of my colleagues in another state, he was telling me about it. The same thing happened to a family. The funeral home did all the stuff. They brought the body to the church, and they told the family, says, we're not taking the body out of the hearse until we get the remaining amount of money.
Oh, that's disgusting.
Oh,
That's
that's terrible.
absolutely disgusting.
Okay.
That is terrible.
It's their right, though. It's their right, because they are business people.
Mhm.
Normally, they won't even bring it to the church, because unless it's paid for, the funeral homes are not getting paid. So they're not going to do anything until they're getting paid too. So I want
So
people
what
to
do they do?
understand that.
Just hold the body for ransom?
Okay, let's talk about that. Let's talk about that too. Now, let's say somebody dies tomorrow. They died yesterday, and they don't hold the funeral until 3-4 weeks later.
Mm.
Typically, a funeral is within 7 to 10 days. When they start getting past that, there's storage fees that come up.
No.
Mm.
And the storage fees could be $100 a day.
Oh. Mm.
Just since we're talking about this, it could be $100 a day for storage fees.
Mhm.
So here's what our company would do with the FCGS process. What if someone was to die out of state? Let's say I went on vacation and I was in Florida and I died in Florida. I use myself because I don't want to use anybody else feel I'm talking about them dying or something, but I'll talk about myself. I don't have a problem with it because I'm talking about death and dying every day. If I died out of state, my policy, through my accident or death benefit of my policy, will pay to get my body back to Maryland. That's death coming out of my death benefit.
Mm.
They will get my body back to here, to the funeral home of my choice here. Okay, and I think that's kind of what the sister was asking about. She's in another country. They will put so much money towards transporting the body from where it died, where the person died at, to where the person wants to be buried at.
So, but if someone had the funds to pay for it in advance, should they buy it all now or let the estate take care of it out of your funds?
My opinion is that if I may not pay for, if I had an insurance policy, I may never pay that $10,000. But if I had that plan through the funeral home, the family's going to have to pay that $10,000. So I'm saying I want to use other people's money as much as I possibly can in terms of that. I don't want to use my family's money. I want that money, any money that I had at $10,000, I want it to go to my family. I don't want it to go to the funeral home. I want it to go to my family. So what I'm going to do is I put a plan in place. Because this is the plan for my funeral, and this is the plan for my family. The money to my family goes to my family. This money over here goes to my whatever funeral services that we're gonna have for me. And see, I prearranged. I got mine is already prearranged through my insurance company. I tell them what I want, what kind of casket I want. Since I'm a retired military, I want a military style funeral. I want a military style casket. I want certain things. I want to be buried at a military funeral, cemetery. Knowing that, I can then, with my company, the FCGS process is going to price shop with funeral homes and get the best price for me with the services that I want, because I already know what I want. I know the casket that I want. I know where I can get the casket that I want from. So all I gotta do is tell them, I want this casket. This is the model number of the casket. This is what you want you to do. I know I want to be buried at Cheltenham. I already need to have all the things arranged for me. So I can go to Cheltenham right now and fill out the application, and I have a plot waiting on me when I do die.
Mhm.
Mrs.
That's
Silvers,
You plan ahead.
you know, over the years, quite a few funeral homes has gone out of business. What happened if you pay for this plan in advance and they go out of business?
Oh,
You
that
could-
is something to think
They have
about.
their families have lost money because of that too.
Mm.
But the money should be backed up by an insurance policy. They should back up, but it has happened. There was a case in DC not too long ago. a few years ago, there was a funeral home on, I think on Kennedy Street or something like that. That had the similar things happening. They was having a problems with the bodies like that. I don't know what happens to that money at that point if they had done that. In many cases, they could have lost their money.
Yeah, they mislabeled the bodies. They couldn't tell one from the other. They stored them without burying them. They, instead of ashes, they were putting just dirt in like containers. It was awful.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's not what I meant. I mean, what I meant is you buy a plan at a funeral home and 10, 15 years later, they're gone out of business. What happened there?
They
How
should
does that
be,
work?
the company should have been insured.
Okay.
They should have been insured. If they weren't insured, then their families could have lost their money.
Well, should you always check to make sure it's insured before you
Well, they have to be now. They have to be backed by
Oh.
insurance now.
Oh,
But-
okay.
But that very well could happen. That's why I'm saying I'm going to have an insurance company that I trust. Our company has been in business since 1963. We're not going anywhere. We're the largest final expense insurance company in America. That's why I went with them.
Uh-huh. Well, I'm
And
glad you're giving us that information, and we have your telephone number. We still want to ask some questions.
As you may call me at any time, ask any questions whatsoever you may ask. That's
Okay,
what I'm here for.
thank you for that.
What about for people that are on their own with like not really too many family members? And maybe they get to a point where they're unable to take care of their monthly bills and things like that, like personal accounting. Do you recommend that they have like a bank trustee take care of things like that, or reach out to your accountant to just handle monthly expenses, things like that?
Now you're talking about the estate planning, what you're talking about here, I think. And at that point, I need to refer you to a lawyer who can handle that, because that get into the estate planning and appointing somebody as trustee over your estate at that point. I think that's the question you're asking about, as asking about what happens to the estate if you're single, you don't have anybody else, and you have assets.
No, that's not what I'm asking. I've already taken care of all of that. I'm
Okay.
asking about what if you're still alive, but you're not as sharp as you used to be. And, you get your monthly bills that need to be paid, and, you need to review statements that come in every month, things like that, like personal bookkeeping. Should you have your accountant take care of something like that, or like a bank trustee?
I would reach out to somebody whom I trust.
And that's the
Hey.
hard part, because I wouldn't want to put that in like a family member's hands.
Right, somebody whom I trust, that I know is going to have my best interest at heart. Like I said, I was telling you about a friend of mine. I'm his executive. He didn't have his family members as executive. I'm his executive. He knows that I'm going to do what's best for him and his family. So you got to find somebody whom you're going to trust. And that could be an accountant, may not be an accountant. I don't know. It could be the bank. So you have to decide on who that person would be. But you do need somebody as an executive of your estate, so that they can make decisions, financial and legal decisions for you if you ever became incapacitated.
Hey, James, this is Joe Wynn. Hey, I saw over here, Miss Rosalind Bell had her hand up. I don't know if she still has a question. Miss Bell?
Ms. Bell,
is
I
it-
think I answered the question, but Ms. Bell, do you still have a question? Ms. Bell? Unmute, Ms. Bell.
Unmute. Hello,
Okay.
can you hear me?
Yes, do you still have a question? You still got your hand up?
Yes.
Okay,
I wanted to piggyback on two questions that you asked about. The funeral home. My husband passed away in 2013, and I had his body sent to a funeral home. Now, I noticed that when I got my certificates back, I asked for 2 death certificates and for cremation. And I noticed that the cremation certificate came back from Riverdale, Maryland. But he was sent to a funeral home in Washington, D.C. here. But the crematory was in Maryland, and the death certificate came from D.C. here. Now, who all does the funeral home charges me also for? I know they charge me for the death certificates and stuff, but does the funeral home gets that money, or does the place that he sends the cremation and everything too?
Okay. I think you have 2 questions here. Okay.
Yes.
The death certificates are issued by the city of DC, Washington, D.C.
Yes, he calls me. Yes, he calls me. I think it was $12 for 2,
Yeah.
or $6 for 2 death certificates.
Okay. The death certificates come from there. And then the whoever cremates the body has to issue a certificate of cremation.
I got that, and it said from Riverdale, Maryland.
Okay. So like I said, there's only a few crematories in the area. It's not a lot of them.
Oh, okay. Now,
Okay.
who really pays for all of that? Does that go into my funeral, paying the funeral home? And
Whatever you paid the funeral home paid for that certificate from your death certificates, the death certificates. It also paid for the cremation certificate. It paid for the cremation, whatever you paid to the funeral home. And that's what they were charged. They know how much XYZ crematory is going to cost.
Okay.
Okay.
Another question is that my uncle, he joined the Army in 41. I think he served in the military twice. He passed away in Germany. But in his will, he wanted to be buried in Arlington Cemetery, which they did go down to get him because Germany had put him in a spot where like he didn't have a family, and they burnt his ashes. They burnt his body. But then and again, by me going I went to Alton Cemetery, and they helped me along with getting his body back up here to Alton Cemetery because he wanted it in his will to be buried in Alton Cemetery. So what Germany did, I think they brought him as far as Wiesbaden, Germany, and the military soldiers picked him up from there. I guess veterans soldiers picked him up from there. But his body was sent back up here. Now I don't know whether they sent dust up here or what, but they said his body was included in that urn that they sent here at military. Are you still there?
Yes, ma'am. I'm here.
Okay, in Alton Cemetery. About 2 months after that, because the son had put both of them in a nursing home, my uncle Alonzo and his wife Rosa, they were both in a nursing home. 2 months 2 months after he passed away, she passed away. And the military went down there because they wanted to be buried together. I have a picture of both of them holding both of their urns in my hand, which was buried out in Arlington Cemetery. It didn't cost me anything, and I also was presented the flag because my niece, well, his wife had passed away, and I was the next one in his family. So it didn't cost me anything for his funeral arrangements or anything. He had a nice burial and had gun salutes, and I was presented with the flag also. But I'm saying that trip from from Germany, I forgot what part, it's a long name, Germany, but up to the United States, back to the United States, is that a procedure of the men that's in the military?
If they died in combat,
No, he wasn't in combat. He had retired because he had
no,
been.
so that wouldn't be a procedure that the military would do. And I'm surprised. I'm surprised that they paid for it. I'm not, you know, I'm not from the VA. I can't tell you what the VA would pay for, but typically, if he was interned in Germany, typically I
Now,
don't.
my uncle joined the military in 1941. He served in 2 wars. I don't know whether it was World War I and World War II or World War II and another one. But I remember him recruiting back in the military again. At the beginning of his time in the military, he had some kind of will that he wanted to be buried in Arlington Cemetery. They had the records there at Arlington Cemetery. They pulled up his name. They showed me what year, how old he was when he enlisted in the service. Enlisted in the service in
Ms. Bell,
19.
Ms. Bell, I think that may be a conversation that you and I may need to have in private.
Okay, then. All right.
Okay.
And
Because, I mean, I can't answer the questions that you're asking right now because that's not something that's outside of the realm of my expertise. But I may be able to guide you in the right direction to get your answer.
Okay. All right, then.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Silver.
No problem. Ms. Jackson, you had your hand up. Ms. Bell, if you can click on the icon to take your hand down, so you know.
Oh,
to answer your question.
okay.
I'm sorry. Good afternoon. Oh, okay. Yeah, I had a question. I don't know if anybody else was getting them, but I was getting cards in the mail from Social Security saying about burial, funeral. Well, it was saying life insurance. And I think it was saying you can get it free in the government if you didn't have any life insurance. I'll get the card.
The only way Social Security you gonna get your if insurance or your burials done for free by the city, if you are destitute, the family is destitute, which means they have less than $2,000.
Mhm.
So unless you in that or the homeless, they may get buried for free, but it's going to be in what's like a pauper's grave.
Oh,
So-
yeah.
So unless you have that, the city is not going to bury you for free.
Yeah, because I was gonna call and see what they was talking about, because they were saying you can get a life insurance
Okay,
and government.
Ms.
Uh-huh.
Jackson,
Uh-huh.
the information that you got in the mail, it may or may not have come from the Social Security Administration.
Mm-hmm.
Just be
Yeah.
careful. Just be careful what you got there, because it may or may not come from the Social Security.
Yeah, right, correct. That's why I never called it or anything.
But if you want more information about it, reach out to me. I mean, I'll be able to help you, at least guide you in the right direction.
Oh, okay. But I do have life insurance. But I was saying, I wanted to know, like, I do have life insurance, so if I add more money to it, I didn't ask them the question yet. Will I have to wait some more years for it kick in to have more with it?
All life insurance is based on 3 factors:
Mm-hmm.
age, health, and sex.
Mm-hmm. Right.
The older you are, the healthier you are, and men get charged more than women.
Right. Correct.
Okay?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So the only way they're going to answer that question is the company like myself or an agent like myself, and we can run numbers for you, but we can only tell you that once we have that. So a lot of these companies now automatically make you modify, which is a 2-year waiting period.
Right.
Before a person can, before somebody, they'll get money.
Right.
Most of the companies here are like that. Our company, unless you are sick, we're not going to modify you.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't answer that. I can't make a general statement unless I know your health condition.
All right. Because I just want to add some more money onto my life insurance.
Let me interrupt right here at this point, because Mr. Silva has given us his contact information. I see a number of you have more detailed personal questions. And so he said he is willing to speak with you, any of you, offline. And we would appreciate him doing that. We're coming to the end of our session. And so we're going to wrap it up at this point. It's been a very, I think, enlightening session for me and I hope for most of you. Again, we will send this session information to Wildtech, to Lou and his group and the DC Office of Aging and Community Living so that they can post it. You can access this session, the recording of this session again, if you like. And as I said, you can contact Mr. Silver. And we want to thank Mr. Silver for an excellent presentation and informing us today of a lot of needed information. Ms. Williams, do you have any closing remarks?
No, other than, again, thank you so much, Mr. Silver, for enlightening us on this topic. You were great. And again, thank you so much for your time.
I'd like to thank everybody for the questions. I think I'd like to thank the staff of our veterans group for allowing me to come and share with the information. I just want to get the information out to anybody who will listen to me. And I thank everybody for attending.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
so much.
We appreciate
you.
your service. Thank you.
Quite welcome them.
Merry Christmas, all.
Merry Christmas, all.
Merry Christmas.
Merry
Okay.
Christmas.
Same to
Okay.
Happy New Year.
everyone.
Everybody have a
Okay.
great holiday.
I'm glad you're back too.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
And be careful out there. Be safe.
Yes, yes. Okay. I see you, Georgia. Hello.
How are you?
Good,
Bye.
good. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
The case managers called. I gotta go see them.
Mhm.
Hey, VETS group.
Hi, Queen.
Yeah, I'm in the car, so what the presentation was good. It was in and out, in and out. The one thing that he did mention that the government don't pay, well, in 1988, I can tell you the government did pay. My son got killed in DC. I didn't have money, didn't have insurance on him. That I didn't have to pay a dime. They did the limousine, they did everything. My sister-in-law, they did the church part. And the law must have changed because they did pay for the whole thing. We had limousine, we had they did everything, and he wasn't cremated, and we was able to do that. And one other thing he talked about, the part where the person is taking care of, didn't have anybody to take care of your bills, and as you get older, that was a valid question, because one of the ladies who, I think I told the VETS group about this, the woman who lives in Virginia, only nephew she had, living relative who lived in California, could not make arrangements for her and get things done here because he's in California. So the state of Virginia, wouldn't kind of let her do certain things until to come here. So there was a lot he covered. I think I'm gonna have to call the man offline. And but that was a good presentation. I really enjoyed it. I was in and out, have the connections fail, but great presentation. I really enjoyed it. And I want to call him, this guy, personally. And maybe he could talk to the family, because that's kind of what we need. We've been talking about that. And having a living will. People say, well, I don't have anything. No, you got a body that's left that people got to deal with. When something happens. So it's so important. I think it's a conversation that we need to keep having. This is not the end of it, because sooner or later, something is going to happen again to somebody we know, or even to our own family members and things like that. So that was great. I really appreciated that.
I'm glad you enjoyed it. How you doing?
Fantastic. Just out and about doing some things. Everything's fine. Family is good. I don't know if y'all heard on the news where this guy got killed in an auto accident. He ran over, seemed like the report was, the police said, looked like the car was already in a blaze. And the guy runs over about 3 or 4 businesses, ruined them. but he lost his life. And it's my neighbor's son. His name is Ron. But yeah, he came to a tragic end, was terrible. I had a chance to see his mom on yesterday, but he perished in that incident.
Mm.
Young man.
Yeah.
But anyway, these things happen. We gotta keep going.
Yeah.
But anyway, thanks. It was great presentations, guys. Really, really enjoyed it.
All righty. Well,
All
Joe,
right.
you still on there? Okay, I'm getting ready to shut it down.
Okay, me too. All right, I'm out.
Take care, baby.
God love you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.